Hello friends, I'm Narendra Verma once again before you. As you know very well that we have been dealing with the chapter number 7, that is dissolution of a partnership firm in accountancy for class 12 CBSE syllabus, right? And in today's session, what we are going to have discussion on treatment of realization expenses in various cases, right? Okay, see, I already explained you in the last video what are the realization expenses. One more time, I just inform you that to see when a firm is dissolved, then there is a process takes place which is known as dissolution process. Okay, for that assets are realized, means the auction is arranged so that and so many people who are interested are invited. Okay, they just do bidding and thereafter the assets are sold to that particular person, and whatever amount is realized after selling the assets, it is utilized for paying the third party liabilities. Okay, so for running this process, arranging this process, okay, some kind of expenses are done, fine, and all these expenses are known as realization expenses. Okay, eventually these are the expenses of the firm. Okay, because firm is getting dissolved, and as you know we follow the business entity concept. According to that, firm is different and the owners are different. Okay, so firm is being dissolved, we are treating firm as an artificial person. Okay, so when it is being dissolved, then it becomes the responsibility of the firm to pay all the debts and expenses on it, if it can, right? Otherwise the remaining liability is borne by the owners, because under partnership we follow the unlimited liability. Okay, but till the amount is available to pay all the debts, then it is done. Even the partners capital balances are paid if the amount is there, fine. So it becomes the responsibility of the firm. Realization expenses are the expenses of the firm by default. Firm is supposed to bear these and the firm is supposed to pay them. Okay, until unless the question specifies any other clarification or information regarding realization expenses, we will treat realization expenses the expenses of firm by default to be borne as well as paid by the firm. Understood the point? Okay, but in question sometimes different kind of situations and cases are given with related to the treatment of realization expenses. Okay, so today we are going to understand all those cases, fine, and we will learn what kind of entry will be passed in particular case. Okay, and why it will be passed. I'll tell you the concept behind it. When you understand something according to the concept, then you remember it all the time, right? There is no need to cram it, just understand the concept, fine. Okay, so how the entry will be done, why the entry will be done, everything we are going to discuss today. And at last, after understanding all these cases, we will attempt a numerical problem on all these cases so that you may understand it better way. Alright, so friends, without wasting much time, let's start. So friends, here are the cases of realization expenses, right? So let's understand them. Okay, so you can see here the cases have been divided into three categories. First, to be borne by firm, second, to be borne by partner, and third special category has been made for remuneration to partner. We'll discuss it later on. Very first, let's talk about to be borne by firm. Like I have just explained to you that by default the realization expenses are to be borne by firm, means firm will bear that. Okay, and firm will also pay that. It's written here as well, in the absence of any clear information in the question, by default realization expenses will be considered to be borne and paid by the firm only. Okay, means this and this both situation will be applied by default, fine. When we attempt the numerical question and see the journal entries, you will understand in the better way. Okay, now for rest of the things the question will give you specification. Okay, if in the question something is mentioned like the realization expenses are to be borne by the firm, okay, but paid by the partner,
and the name of particular partner is also given. Fine. Maybe possible they have used a different language to state the same thing. Like you may find a kind of language, the realization expenses were paid by the partner on behalf of the firm. It means the same. Okay, so there may be the difference of the language, but the sense will be same. Okay, that you need to understand as a student. The person who has said the question will definitely try his level best to confuse you, but you need to understand and interpret the actual meaning behind the words written there. All right, so once again explain you, if to be borne by firm situation is given and no other information is given, we consider it that it is paid by the firm by default. But for rest of the things, the question will specify. Okay, so if the question says that realization expenses were to be borne by the firm but paid by the partner, or paid by the partner on behalf of firm, okay, then this situation will be applicable. Fine. After making you understand all these, we will discuss the journal entries. Okay. Now, let's discuss the another category, that is to be borne by partner. That will also be specified in the question specially, that realization expenses are to be borne by partner. Okay, now here can be two cases. Okay, first case, paid by partner only. Fine. In the question it is given the realization expenses were to be borne by a partner and were paid by a partner. Fine. So this is one situation. Okay, another situation is what? Realization expenses to be borne by a partner but paid by firm. Here you may find a different language, like realization expenses were paid by a firm on behalf of partner. It means the same. Okay, and the third situation comes here, paid by another partner. Fine. Say for example, realization expenses were to be borne by a partner, that is A. Okay, and these were in actual paid by a partner, that is B. Fine. So that is also possible given. Okay, so three cases are here under the category to be borne by partner. One, paid by the partner himself, another paid by firm on behalf of partner, and the third one paid by another partner. Understood the point? Now let's discuss the third category. Sometimes what happens, the firm decides to give some amount as remuneration to a particular partner to run the process of dissolution. Okay, and in that case, in the question specifically it will be mentioned to you, amount of remuneration will also be given. Okay, and here there are two cases. One, in the amount of remuneration, realization expenses are also included, one case. Another, in the amount of remuneration, realization expenses are not included, means excluded expenses. Okay, so what's gonna happen in that case? If this category is there, say for example there is a partner called A and the firm has given him 10,000 rupees as remuneration including the realization expenses. Okay, so in that case the entire responsibility of the amount and everything will go to partner. Okay, but here in this case, let's take the same example. The partner was given 10,000 rupees and he was given this amount only as a remuneration to run the process. He is not supposed to bear the expenses. Okay, so expenses in that case will be borne by what? Firm. Why? Because in actual, I told you that realization expenses are the expenses of firm only. Okay, so understand this situation. In a little while I just show you the journal entry here so that you can understand in better way. Have a look here. So the first category, to be borne by firm. Okay, and by default situation paid by firm. Then what journal entry we are going to pass? Realization account debit to cash or bank account. Right, very simple entry, because realization expenses belong to the category of account that is nominal, right? And what is the rule for nominal account? All the expenses and losses are debited. Okay, and all the gains and profits are credited, right? So here it is the expense, so that is why realization account is debited, okay, and cash and bank is credited, because here the principle of real account is applied, okay. Credit what goes out, understood? So by default situation you need to pass this entry, realization account debit to cash or bank account. Now let's understand, if the question says that realization expenses were paid by partner on behalf of firm, then try to understand this. Still, the realization expenses is the expenditure of the firm, because firm is supposed to bear it, okay. Then in the books of firm we will debit realization account, understood the point? But cash did not go anywhere from the pocket of firm, that went from the pocket of partner. Now understand one system here, okay. If partner had paid some amount of money on behalf of firm, it means the firm is supposed to pay back that amount to partner, okay. And firm generally directly does not pay any amount to partner for the transaction for giving or taking. What the firm does, either it debits or credits the particular partner's capital account, right? So in this case there will be an increase in the liability of the firm towards the particular partner. So that is why firm will credit particular partner's capital account, okay. Say for example, earlier his capital balance was 1,20,000 and he paid 8,000 rupees on behalf of firm as realization expenses. Now the firm will bear the liability 1,28,000, understood the point? Because the liability on the firm related to that particular partner increased by 8,000, okay. So remember here, under the case the realization expenses to be borne by firm and paid by partner, then what entry is going to be passed? Realization account debit to partner's capital account, okay. Now let's move on to second category, realization expenses to be borne by partner, okay. In that case, very simple one, if to be borne by partner and paid by the same partner, in that case no entry in the books of firm. Why? Because that is partner's personal matter. Whatever payment he is supposed to make, he will make, because right now realization expenses are not the expenses of firm. Why? Because these are to be borne by partner, not firm, understood the point? Okay, so if it is paid by the partner, no entry will be passed. Fine, entry will be passed when either of these two cases take place, okay. So let's understand this. If this is a situation, expenses were to be borne by partner but paid by firm, means firm paid realization expenses on behalf of partner, then the money went out from the pocket of firm. So in that case we will credit cash or bank account, understood the point? But we will debit partner's capital account. Why? Because the firm is going to recover this amount from partner, okay. When firm is going to pay some amount to partner, then it credits that partner's capital account, and when firm is going to recover something from the partner, then it debits particular partner's capital account, understood the point? So I repeat the situation, when the realization expenses to be borne by partner but paid by the firm on his behalf, in that case what entry is going to be passed? Particular partner's capital account debit to cash or bank account, understood the point? Now let's move on to the third situation, okay. Say for example that the realization expenses to be borne by a partner, that is A, fine, and these were in actual paid by the another partner, that is B. Let's take for example, okay. So in that case what's gonna happen? Bearing partner's capital account debit means A's capital account will be debit. Why? Because he was supposed to bear it, fine. And to paying partner's capital account, who is the paying partner here? B. So B's capital account will be credited in that case, understood the point? Okay, so understand here why we did that, because we are passing these entry in the books of firm, okay. Firm will charge money from this partner because he was supposed to pay, Firm will charge money from this partner. That is why firm debited his account, because firm will recover, and whenever firm recovers, the firm debit the particular partner's capital account, right? We have already learned that. So here also the firm will recover that amount. Okay, and then firm will pay that amount to another partner who paid in actual. Okay, so whenever firm has to make the payment to a particular partner, then it credits the account. So that is why here in the books of firm, what entry we are passing? A's capital account debit to B's capital account. Understood the point? Okay, so these three situations were there related to the realization expenses to be borne by partner. Okay, now let's understand the another third extended category, that is remuneration to partner. If remuneration is being paid to a partner to run the dissolution process, then in that case there are two possibilities like I have just discussed. If he is supposed to pay the realization expenses also out of that amount, then what entry is going to be passed in the books of firm? Realization account debit to partners capital account for both, for remuneration as well as expenses. Okay, because we are not passing entry here for expenses, we are passing the entry here for remuneration to a partner, but on the name of realization. That is what the thing. Okay, and here let me tell you one more thing. Okay, say for example the partner was given 10,000 rupees to run the dissolution expenses including the realization expenses, but in actual what happened, realization expenses amounted to rupees 10,000, then there is no problem. But maybe possible that he tried to run the process and the realization expenses incurred only 9,000. In that case also we will pass this entry with 10,000. Similarly, if the realization expenses amounted to rupees 11,000, in that case also we will pass the entry with 10,000. Understood? Because we are passing this entry for remuneration on the name of realization. Understood the point? Okay, that is why realization account will be debited and two partners capital account. Why? Because the firm is supposed to make that amount of remuneration to particular partner, and we have already understood that whenever firm is supposed to make payment to a partner, it credits the account of that particular partner. The same is being done here as well. Understood? So under the category, I repeat, just be focused here. When the remuneration is paid to a particular partner by a firm including expenses, whether the expenses are equal, less or more than the remuneration, okay, the entry will be passed with the amount of remuneration paid, that is realization account debit to partners capital account. Understood? Now let's discuss about the last category, that is excluding expenses. Here also remuneration was paid. Say for example 10,000 remuneration was paid to a partner, okay, and in actual realization expenses happened 8,000. Fine, this remuneration did not include the expenses, so in that case we will pass two entry, one for remuneration with 10,000 and another for expenses with 8,000. Okay, what will be the two entries? The first entry will be there, the same one, realization account debit to partners capital account with 10,000, and second entry will be there, this one, realization account debit to cash or bank account. So after combining these two entry, we will get one compound entry, that is realization account debit with 18,000, okay, to partners capital account with 10,000, to cash or bank account with 8,000. That is what. Nothing we did, we just compound these two entries. Okay, because when the partner is not bearing this amount, okay, that is not included in his remuneration, then who will pay it by default? Obviously firm will pay. Okay, so that is why it has been done. Alright friends, so it was about the all cases of realization expenses on the dissolution of a partnership firm. Okay, we will understand all these cases in better way when we attempt a numerical question. Understood the point?
So friends, after understanding all the cases related to realization expenses, let's attempt a numerical question based on all these cases, right? So you can see the question on your screen. So I have written the question here. Okay, I had a space problem, so try and manage. You must have seen the entire question in the slide, right? So I just read it out. Problem number 1, pass journal entries in the books of ABC for the following transaction. Okay, so we won't read all these all together, we'll read them one by one. Okay, very first we'll prepare the format of journal. Alright, so let's start with the transaction number 1. What it says, realization expenses amounted to rupees 20,000. Fine, no other information is given. So as I explained you, this is by default situation. Fine, in the absence of any further information, what we'll consider that these expenses are the expenses of the firm. Okay, and what entry will be passed? As we are passing these entries in the books of firm. Okay, so what entry will be done? Realization account debit to cash account. We just take cash. We can either put cash or bank. So right now I'm just using cash for all entries. Okay, so realization account debit 20,000 to cash account 20,000 being realization expenses paid. Fine. Now let's move on to second transaction. What does it say? This is done. Realization expenses amounted to rupees 10,000. Fine. Were paid by a partner A. Let's read it again. These were the expenses by default of the firm, but these were paid by a partner. Means this is a case expenses to be borne by firm but paid by partner. Okay. The second case I discussed with you. So what entry is going to be passed here? As it is the expense of the firm, then definitely we will debit realization account here, but partner paid and the firm is supposed to pay back to the partner, and for that what the firm is going to do? It is going to credit the particular partner's capital account. And who's the partner here? A. Then A's capital account. Have a look here. Realization account debit to A's capital account 10,000 being realization expenses paid by A on behalf of firm. Understood? Okay. Now let's move on to the transaction number 3. What it says, realization expenses amounted to rupees 10,000 were to be borne and paid by B, a partner. So this is the first situation of the second category, right? Were to be borne and paid by partner. So here the firm is not involved because these were not the expenses of firm, these were the expenses to be borne by partner, and partner himself paid it as well. Then there will be no entry in the books of firm. But we'll have to write down here. If such question comes in the examination, then you'll have to write down here under transaction 3rd, no entry. Okay. Now let's move on. Transaction number 4. 3rd is done. Let's see for 4. Realization expenses amounted to rupees 10,000 were paid by the firm on behalf of B, a partner. Now this is the exact opposite situation of this transaction number 2. Right? Means expenses to be borne by a partner but paid by a firm. So when the expenses are paid by a firm means the amount has gone from the pocket of firm. Then we are supposed to credit cash account. Okay? With how much amount? 10,000. Right? And these were to be borne by a partner, but the firm paid. The firm will recover from whom? From partner. And how? By debiting his capital account. So who was the partner? B. Right? So B's capital account will be debited. B's capital account debit 10,000 to cash account 10,000 being realization expenses paid by a firm on behalf of B. Understood the point? Now let's move on to the transaction number 5, because 4 is done. Realization expenses of rupees 10,000 were to be borne by B, okay, a partner. However, it was paid by C, another partner. So this is the third situation of second category, when expenses were to be borne by one partner, that is what? B, and were paid by another partner, that is what? C. So what entry is going to be done here? Let's have a look. Bearing partner's capital account debit to paying partner's capital account, right? Here the partner B bears, we read it here, to be borne by B. So B's capital account debit and C has paid. So then to C's capital account 10,000 being realization expenses paid by C on behalf of B, right? So this situation is also done. Now let's read the transaction number 6. Okay, what it says: C, a partner was paid remuneration including expenses, right? Means the first situation of the third category, okay, including expenses of rupees 15,000 to carry out dissolution of the firm. Actual expenses were rupees 20,000. Now, in this kind of situation, understand this amount is given just to confuse you. Okay, we will pass entry with this amount. Why? Because this is including expenses. Now it becomes the partner's efficiency whether he finish all the expenses process within this 15,000 or less than 15,000 or more than 15,000. That is not our concern. We will pass entry only with this amount. Okay, so let's pass the entry here. Realization account debit 15,000 to C's capital account 15,000, being remuneration paid to C for carrying out dissolution process including expenses, right? Like I have already explained you, this entry we pass for remuneration only but on the name of realization expenses. Okay, so whether he pays 15,000, 20,000 or 8,000, 5,000 doesn't make any difference. We will pass entry only for 15,000 because 15,000 was given including expenses. Understood? Okay, now let's read the transaction number 7. See, a partner is paid remuneration of rupees 10,000 for dissolution of the firm, right? Realization expenses of rupees 16,000 are met by the firm. Now this is the second situation under the category third. Okay, the remuneration was paid 10,000, fine, but apart from the remuneration, here nowhere it is mentioned that this remuneration was including expenses, right? Okay, and here clearly mentioned as well that realization expenses of the 16,000 are met by the firm. Okay, so here we have two options: either we pass two entries or we pass one compound entry. Okay, so very first I pass two entries and then I will combine these two. Okay, so have a look here. Realization account debit to C's capital account 10,000, being remuneration to carry out dissolution process paid to C. This entry is there for remuneration. Okay, now second part of the entry, realization account debit 16,000 to cash account, being realization expenses paid by the firm. Okay, so either we can pass these two entries in this case or we can combine these two entries. Okay, how? Realization account debit 26,000, 10,000 plus 16,000, because here also it is debited and here as well you can see. So 26,000 total. To C's capital, this 10,000 comes here. To cash account, this 16,000 comes here. And addition can also be compound. Being remuneration paid to C to carry out dissolution process and realization expenses paid by firm. Understood? Okay, so this is the last situation that we discussed so far. Okay, now sometimes in the question what happens, two of the situation or three of the situations are mixed. Okay, some portion is to be borne by firm, some portion is to be borne by partner, but in actual it was paid by either of these two. Then situation becomes a bit complex, but if you follow the concept, then you can solve it and you can pass the correct entry. How? Let's understand these in the next three situations. Okay, let's read the transaction number 8. What it says: dissolution expenses were rupees 16,000, right? Out of the said expenses, 6,000 were to be borne by the firm and the balance by B. Okay, C, realization expenses were to be 16,000. Okay, and out of the 16,000, 6,000 will be borne by firm and 10,000 to be borne by partner. That's what the question is trying to say. Okay, now in actual what happened? Were paid by the firm. Rupees 16,000 were paid by the firm. Means the firm was to pay only 6,000, but the firm paid 16,000. Means for 6,000 there is no problem because it was to be borne by the firm. Okay, but for this 10,000 which was to be borne by the partner but paid by the firm. Okay, now you can understand. This is the combination of two situations. First, one situation, first situation of the first category and another second situation of the second category. These two have been merged. Now for solving this problem, very first we will pass two entries and then I'll show you whether we can compound it or not. Okay, so let's have a look. So have a look here. Realization account debit to cash account. This is for the portion which is to be borne by firm. Okay, and B's capital account debit to cash account. This is for the portion means this 10,000 were to be borne by B but paid by firm. Okay, either we pass these two entries or we can pass a single compound entry. Realization account debit would be 6,000. B's capital account debit would be 10,000. To cash account 16,000 because from firm's pocket total 16,000 was paid. Okay, we'll write the relation here. B realization expenses will be 16,000 paid by firm, out of which rupees 10,000 were on behalf of B. Understood? So here this is the mix up of two situations. Okay, so this is also done to confuse you. Okay, so don't get confused. Separate the information and then do the treatment according to that. Okay, now let's move further. Let's read the transaction number 9. Dissolution expenses were rupees 16,000, fine. 6,000 were to be borne by the firm and the balance by a partner. Okay, the same situation up to this level. The expenses were paid by the partner, but here the situation became just opposite. Okay, 16,000 were the expenses, 6,000 were to be borne by firm and 10,000 were to be borne by a partner. Okay, but in actual what happened? Firm did not pay anything, partner paid. I just write down here, the amount was 16,000, out of this 6,000 were to be paid by firm and 10,000 by partner. Okay, but partner paid 16,000. So for this 10,000, there will be no entry in the books of firm. Why? Because this is the first situation of the second category. Okay, to be borne by partner, paid by partner, no entry. But here, the partner paid money on behalf of firm. This is the second situation of second category. Okay, in that case, entry will be passed. Understood the point? I just show you how. So, I have written here just to make you understand. However, you are not supposed to write it. No entry for 10,000. Why? Because that was to be borne by partner and paid by partner, so no entry. Okay, but for remaining 6,000, we pass the entry. What? Realization account debit, because this was to be borne by firm. So it was the expenditure of firm, relation account will be debited. Okay, to B's capital account. B paid it on behalf of firm. Now the firm is supposed to repay the partner. And how it will be done? By crediting his capital account. So B's capital account is credited in that case. B realization expenses of rupees 6,000 paid by B on behalf of firm. Okay, and for 10,000, no entry. Even we won't write this. I wrote it down to make you understand. We won't write it here. We'll simply pass this entry. Okay. Now let's move on to the transaction number 10. But here I had the space problem, so remaining part of the question I have been here. You can go back to the slide and see the question in proper way. Okay. I just read it out. A partner was appointed to look out the process of dissolution, for which he was allowed a remuneration of rupees 36,000. So there is a partner, he was given 36,000 as remuneration. Okay, fine, no problem. Now, A agreed to take over the stock worth rupees 36,000 as his remuneration. The stock had already been transferred to realization account. Fine. So instead of making this payment in cash, what the firm did, okay, firm kept the proposal in front of A that you take the stock as your remuneration of the same amount, and A agreed to that. So in that case, what's going to happen? No entry will be done. Why? Because the stock was already transferred to realization account, it was dissolved, now it was to be realized, and this is the case when any liability is paid by giving particular asset in full settlement. Then in that case we do not pass any entry. Okay, now you will see what is a liability. To pay remuneration to a partner was a liability for the firm, right? So one case there is no entry, and if you are going to pass entry for this, I'll show you the effect will be nullified. Okay, if you want to pass, go and pass the entry. What entry will be done? I will show you. So, there are two options in this kind of transaction. One, there will be no entry passed, but another alternative treatment. If you want to pass the entry, there will be two entries passed here. I will explain you how. First entry will be there for remuneration. Fine. As the remuneration will be the expenditure of the firm, so realization account will be debited to A's capital account. Fine, because the liability will arise on the firm. Okay, so being remuneration paid to A for carrying out dissolution process, 36,000, 36,000. Alright. Another entry, A's capital account debit to realization account, being stock was taken over by A as remuneration. Whenever any asset is taken over by any partner, then partner's capital account is debited to realization account. The same entry is passed here. Now you see the effect. Okay, A's capital account is credited with 36,000 and debited here with 36,000. So it will be cancelled by this. Similarly, realization account is debited with 36,000 and credited with 36,000. So it will be nullified from here as well. That is why you have two options. Either you pass no entry anywhere or you pass these two entries. Understood the point? Okay, you can choose any of the situation. Your solution will be correct. Okay, alright friends, so it was all about the various cases related to the treatment of realization expenses on the dissolution of a partnership firm. Very soon I am going to meet you in the another video taking the concept further. Till then, thank you, bye bye.